You know, it's been a weekend and a half here at TradeshowGuy Studios. My mother turned 90 a couple of days ago, and we had a party, I'm telling you. And my youngest son graduated from high school the night before. And, of course, being Oregon in June, it rained during much of those types of events. So, hey, that's my news. Thanks for joining me. I'm Tim Patterson, Tradeshow Guy, and this is Tradeshow Guy Monday Morning Coffee for Monday, June 11th. 2018. If you haven't already, you can find me online at Instagram and Twitter as Tradeshow Guy. On YouTube, my channel is Tradeshow Marketing. And on Facebook, if you go search for Tradeshow Guy blog, you'll find me there, of course. And various websites include things like TradeshowGuyblog.com. That's where I embed this video and audio version of the podcast, and that's the main outlet for all the writings I do. Tradeshow Guy Exhibits is the company website, TradeshowGuyExhibits.com, and I've been doing a lot of work on that last couple of weeks. It's changed a lot. You should go check it out, Tradeshow Guy Exhibits. There's a couple of other sites, or actually four others, the TradeshowExhibitBuyersKit.com. If you're interested in buying a new exhibit and you're curious what the process is, this lets you access kind of a whole kit on that, on how to do that. Tradeshow Guy Webinars is a site that doesn't get much updating now, but it's got probably 2 years worth of archived webinars on there that I've done since, I think, 2016. So there's a lot of great information there. Tradeshow Success Book is a site where you can download a free digital copy of my first book, Tradeshow Success. You can find the book on Amazon as well. And TradeshowSuperheroes.com, which is a site where you can download a free chapter and get a link to buy the book on Amazon as well. So they're all right there. So those are my online outlets, as it were. I don't think I'm missing too many of them. Today on the vlog/podcast, we're going to discuss photography, more specifically headshot photography. Now, you no doubt know what headshot photography is, right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's, whatever that is. We're going to talk about that and other types of commercial photography with my guest today, Kelly Mooney of Kelly Mooney Photography out of the Portland, Oregon area. I had the pleasure of having her do a session with me for headshots last year. Turned out great stuff. And those are the various photos you see of me on my blog and on online, LinkedIn, and more. So there you go. Lots of great tips. Watch, listen, and take some notes. And welcome to Kelly Mooney on the Tradeshow Guy Monday Morning Coffee. Kelly, I'm so glad we get a chance to meet. You took pictures of me. We met a couple of times, but it's great to have you on the podcast and vlog. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. This is fun. Good chance to maybe hopefully share some ideas of how people can get some great shots for themselves. Well,
let's talk. We actually met at a networking group probably last year sometime up in the Portland area. I'm a little south of Portland, and you're in the Portland area.
Right.
But and then we got together a little bit later, and you did some headshots of me, which are all over my blog and websites, and great stuff, fun stuff. Had a really good time. Great stuff came out of that. So tell me how you got to that point to being a photographer of people as far as headshots, and I don't know what else you do, but certainly that's the one thing you do.
Mine was a pretty indirect path, actually. I started out years ago in sales and marketing and was working in ad sales, and over time discovered that what I really loved was more of the marketing and actually public relations. So I went to work for years for an agency and started my own agency to admit almost 20 years ago now. Started a PR firm and loved what I did. Really enjoyed working with companies and individuals and getting them publicity and getting them media coverage. Over time, the industry changed and it became a lot more about the numbers, less about the connection with people. And so I was, among other things, just periodically using my camera because I was a hobby photographer, and I would pick up my camera and take pictures for clients, whether it was taking their headshots or product photos or event photos. And it was my husband who actually said to me one day, "You seem a lot happier when you put a camera in your hand." And I went, come to think of it. So after about 17 years, I shuttered the PR firm and
no pun intended.
Go all in on photography.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've been a hobby photographer since I was a kid. My dad had a black and white dark room in the basement, and I learned how to do all the stir the negatives up and all that stuff and make prints. A lot of fun stuff. So It's a great hobby. And it's a great profession. I've got a nephew who's very successful in the wealth management world, but his goal is to be a nature photographer because he's really good at it. So there's a lot of different angles. So is there one that's easier to make a living versus one that's more based on kind of luck and hobby? And I'm not sure how that whole thing works out. So
based on experience, at least, and talking to people in the industry and everything like that, I would say that I've learned that if you're going to work in portraits, as I do, working on the commercial side of things really makes a big difference. I mean, I love working with individuals. One of my big categories is high school seniors, and I love them. I've got kids who are, high school and college age, and so I really love working with them. But what I found is in order to do what I love, I need to first pay the bills. So paying the bills, I've learned that's really where the commercial photography comes into play. So I'll go into a company. I mean, as you know, everything is visual now. Everything, all of your impressions are made instantly and frequently, long before you meet somebody in person or a business encounters a client. It's a visual media first that makes your impression. So I will frequently go into businesses and take photos for them of not only their headshots to get, to really demonstrate their team in a very personable way, but I'll also go in and take pictures of what you and I might consider like stock photography, but it's more custom to the client. So photos of them interacting with other customers, photos of their products, anything that like shows off the engagement of their end item to their audience. So,
well, you talk about visual medium. I mean, obviously, Instagram is a visual medium. It's one of the most popular platforms out there. Facebook, almost everyone posts pictures there and videos. And so video and still photography are a very big thing. And everyone's, got a camera right here that they carry around them. And it's a very high quality camera.
It is.
It doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that, a 35 millimeter digital would do, or even other formats. But so how do you differentiate when it comes to that kind of photography, which everyone thinks they can be a photographer, to photography that a commercial entity is willing to pay for? I'm just curious how you approach them, what kind of things. Obviously, you show them portfolios and things, but what's that conversation about?
Usually, the conversation starts with talking about the business and what they're trying to communicate. I mean, so all of those years I spent as a publicist really comes back into play with what I'm doing here, because you need to understand the company. You need to understand what their message is, who their audience is. If I can, I'll give you an example from a headshot session I did today. I was working with a woman who came in and said, I just need a LinkedIn headshot. That's what she said she needed. As we talked, it turns out that she was starting a new position for a local city. And the job entails, connecting entrepreneurs with providers. So if you need to go in and find a good CPA, or you need to find a marketer, or you need a web designer, she facilitates that. So an entrepreneur isn't like trying to figure out everything completely on their own. So the more we talked, the more I found out, for her business, she's got to come off as very warm, knowledgeable, and she also doesn't work in an office. The whole corporate look wasn't what she needed, even though she originally thought she wanted something with a traditional backdrop, things like that. So the more we talked, the more we realized most of her meetings are taking place in coffee shops. It's very one-to-one. And so we shifted gears entirely, and we actually went down the street to my local coffee shop. And I had her holding a cup of coffee and, holding her phone, and just we incorporated something that really communicated the message of, here's what I'm going to offer you. And so that's really what comes into play with all of my clients. The job is not to come in and take great pictures. Yes, I better be able to do that. Right. But the job is to understand what they need in order to get the business.
And if you can communicate that in a snapshot of, which is, a millimeter of a second, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you can do that, you've really accomplished something. I agree that's, and I'm glad to hear that you talked that through with all that conversation. What kind of image do you really want to communicate? I know we talked a little bit about that when we did the headshots for me, and we ended up with a good 30 or 40 that I ended up choosing, I think half a dozen from.
Right.
Which I like them all. They're all great, and I think we need to do it again sometime here in the next year or so.
Love that. I love that. And I have all sorts of ideas of other things that we could do now.
I'm sure. So let's talk about the headshots a little bit before we wrap this up. And what kind of things do you look for? And we kind of started that with the conversation you had with this woman. But what kind of things, maybe tips that you could give people as they go into any session? Because you're not going to work with everyone that hears this. There could be someone in London listening. You're not going to fly over there.
Right, exactly.
But you can give them some good tips, right?
I'm ready to go, but no, but no. The big, so it starts here. Okay, with the headshots, it starts with the eyes. And one of the things is if you're looking through LinkedIn, I mean, I challenge you, open up your LinkedIn profile, look at the people you're connected to. You're going to see a number of them who somehow have their eyes either averted or covered somehow, whether it's from too much shadow, sunglasses, because they think that looks cool, things like that. But really, your eyes are so important. That's something that you've got to let people see immediately. And the lighting also makes a difference. You know, if you want to communicate that you are open and friendly, that better be a pretty bright light that's surrounding you. Beyond that, you know, it's the clothing that matters. And clothing needs to be, you know, you've probably heard with interviews, dressing a station above the job you're going for. And really that should be the headshot as well.
Yeah.
You find that you get a higher response in terms of competence and likability and influence when you are dressed a little more formally than perhaps your station calls. And then when it comes to clothing too, it's important that you've got things that don't distract from who you are. So solid colors are really best, and colors that are really good and saturated. So I'm wearing a good example of it, like a deep blue versus a light blue. I actually, this was not intentional, but you know, so those colors tend to look better on most skin types, and it allows your face to be the focus. So, I mean, those are some of the big things I would say. And then just cropping, the way it's cropped is important because you need to be able to see head and shoulders. There's some people that do a picture that's like, you know, cropped, and they think that, again, looks cool. It can give off a little bit of a creepy vibe. So,
it does, yeah.
So, you know, in the end, you want it to be really representative of who you are. You want to look friendly, smiling counts, you know, and don't go crazy with the filters. There's so many people who use filters on their photos, and it's a fad. It's going to go away. Like let you be you when it comes to your photos. I think that's, you know, really
if Instagram has that availability, people will do it forever. But I see less and less of it, though, to be honest. So,
and I do think it's dissipating a little bit. So, you know,
well, you know, you made me think that as far as what presentation people want to give, what kind of clothing they have, that bears a further conversation. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk's going to have a different image than Jeff Bezos, than Bill Gates. You know, these people have images out there. The first time I saw Gary V, as he's known, someone said, you should see this video. It's a great video. And I watched this video. In the first 4 or 5 minutes, he comes out in a ratty T-shirt and jeans, holy jeans, tennis shoes, and he dropping F-bombs, and I'm going, who is this guy? I was kind of taken aback. But then after I watched for a while, I went, he really knows what he's talking about. And he attracts a certain type, and that is whatever image he has, he's cultivated it. I think it has modified over the years since I first saw that, but that's going to be a different image. He may look great in a T-shirt, and Mark Zuckerberg may look great in a T-shirt, but you know, Steve Jobs needs the turtleneck. I don't know. So everyone has a different approach, and you know that. If you can't figure out what you're going to do, I have to think about that. You know, do I wear the tie? I have a branded shirt on because I do that a lot when I'm
of course,
out in public. But, you know, there's no wrong answers, but I think there's a way to narrow it down. And I'm sure that's a conversation you can have with them as well.
Right. Yeah, no, I just think, you know, when it comes to the clothing, because that is probably the first question I get every single time somebody calls me to you know, and we're setting it up is what should I wear? And this is the time to probably default to a little bit more of a conservative look, you know, but allow your photographer. I mean, if you're going to go with a professional photographer, bring choices. That's the other thing is, you know, the a photo can really change based on the background. And if you've got somebody that you're shooting on a light colored background, you want contrast, but allow the photographer to be a part of that process to help you choose what's going to look best depending on your setting.
Yeah, and for a guy, that means bring 2 or 3 shirts and a couple ties, and for women, bring a couple of different outfits, maybe if you have the time. And you probably going to want to spend an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes at least, maybe 2 hours if it's a longer session. Is that pretty good, accurate assessment?
Truthfully, I can, for somebody who's needing a new headshot that they want just kind of for general purposes, we can make a lot happen in about less than 30 minutes, actually.
Right. Okay.
So it doesn't take an awful long time, but when we get into more of the professional portraits that are done in settings, for like I work with nutritionists, for example, and we're shooting in a kitchen, that's when you get more involved because there's other props, there's more storytelling that goes into it. Sure. So yeah, 30 minutes.
If someone is shopping for a headshot, they just want a basic thing, what kind of price range should they be looking at? I'm just curious whether it's yours and what other similar photographers would do. What kind of range are they looking at?
I would say I definitely fall into what would be considered a little bit of the low to mid end on my pricing. I have headshot sessions for 30 minutes that start at $175 and include, after you're done with you get an online gallery where you can review all the photos, make your choices, and you get 2 finished images. Now the finishing is, there's retouching that's done. Little light retouching, not, I'm not going to change how you look, but, flyaway hairs and whitening teeth and things like that you do.
Right.
But I know one photographer here in Portland whose headshot sessions are about $800.
Yeah.
Now, the experience is probably a little bit more elaborate. One of the things that I come from, because of my background is I'm very aware of time, and I know how precious executives' times are, job searchers' times are. It's like, so I believe in, let's get this done. We can get it done beautifully, but it doesn't have to take half a day. So,
right. And I also like the way that your company personally operates in that it's all done. Once that session is over, it's all done online. You can log in and review. You're the only one that has access, and then you make your choices, and it's great. Works great. So Kelly, where can people find you as we wrap up? I know you're in the Portland area. Do you travel outside of Portland to do these things, or you just basically located and do all your business in that area?
Mostly in the Portland area. Again, anybody wants to, have me shoot them in Italy, I'm game.
You're game, huh?
But yeah, I've got a studio in Oregon City. And you can find me at kellymooneyphotography.com. That's for more of the personal portraits.
Okay.
That's also where I work with the high school seniors. kmooneystudios.com is my commercial side.
Okay.
So kmooneystudios.com is where you can find me. I've got my studio, but frequently, I spend probably half of my week shooting on location with clients. Right. So
and we shot on location in a very nice, corporate-looking building. It was nice. It had open air and open, windows.
Lots of good windows. Great. Yes.
Natural lighting's the best, I'm sure.
Makes a big difference. Yeah.
Makes a big difference. Kelly, it's a pleasure chatting with you. We'll drop some of those links on the show notes, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Sounds great, Tim. Thanks so much. It's good talking to you.
Thanks again to Kelly Mooney of Kelly Mooney Photography for sharing her thoughts and insight into what it takes to create a great headshot. That's good stuff there. And if you're in the Portland area and need a headshot, by all means, look her up. I'll make sure there are links on the blog. And she did say, if you wanted to fly her to Italy for some photography work, she'd strongly consider doing that. So for this week's trade show tip, let's go to a blog post I wrote earlier this year that outlined 10 best trade show practices. If you can narrow them down to 10, let's do 10. Number 1, create your marketing plan based on the specific event where you're going to set up and exhibit, because, you get different audiences, different competitors, and different goals from different shows. Number 2, your promotion item should be a natural fit with your product or service. Just make sure it's a good fit. Giving away an embossed flash drive if you're in the tech industry and want people to remember what you do might be a good fit. Just make sure it fits. And you work with good promotion products people, they can find those items for you. Try to have some activity in your booth space. People are drawn to activity and movement. As you know, a crowd draws a crowd. If you can even get a little mini crowd, that'll draw even more. So try to have something going on in your booth, whether it's some movement, some interactivity, a guest, something. Prior to the show floor's opening, have a brief meeting with your staff. That's a good tip. That's number 4. Remind them of the show goals. Hand out kudos for work well done, and gently remind those who are perhaps coming up a bit short what they need to work on. Number 5, graphic messaging on your exhibit should be clear as a bell, which means the less words, the more distinct your message. Don't muddy it up with a lot of text. Number 6, follow up on leads in a very timely manner. Lead generation and follow-up systems should be something that you continually work to improve. This is where most companies fall short. Warm leads that are followed up on right after the show will produce more results than those that are weeks or months old. Number 7, qualify and disqualify your visitors quickly. Unqualified visitors should be invited to refer a colleague and be politely disengaged. If they're qualified, you can, say, hey, you've earned more time. We can talk a little more. Let's figure out what your needs are, including the time frame, what the solution your product can solve, their contact information, and have an agreed upon follow-up schedule. Number 8, the power of a professional presenter cannot be understated. Some products and shows lend themselves more to presenters than others, but a good presenter could be able to make it work in any situation and will certainly bring in more leads than not using them. By the way, if you do hire a presenter, you must have a staff that understands and is prepared to deal with all those additional leads that will be generated. So you got to know that they are prepared for it. Otherwise, a lot of those leads that the presenter attracts will slip away. Number 9, trade shows are a marathon, so pace yourself. Number 10, spring for the good stuff, the carpet padding and wear comfortable shoes. You can never say this enough because you're going to be on your feet a lot. So that is this week's trade show tip. And finally, let's wrap up on one good thing. Kelly and I touched on it in our chat. She started as a hobby photographer. I've been a hobby photographer since I was a kid. I think I mentioned my dad had a black and white darkroom that we used to play around a lot in, and I had 3 brothers, but it seems like I was the one always down there taking pictures, developing negatives, making prints, and, I look back at it now and it's kind of crazy. There's some good stuff that came out of it, but it was a lot of fun. So I think photography, and of course we can do that with this, our telephone. We can do that all day long with a camera that is really, really good. So think about it. If you're into photography, that's great, but I bet you can be a better photographer if you just kind of see what works, read about it online. But I like photography. So let's make photography this week's one good thing. Have yourself a great week.